Good afternoon. Pastor Naomi Barachanic here again from Spirit of Joy Lutheran Church in Clarkdale, Arizona, continuing our 10th video on Pastor Buechner's book, Wishful Thinking. And those of you that have been with me know that it's simply an A to Z book of definitions, mostly theological. Definitions by Pastor Buechner, not maybe ones that we would find in the pulpit, but help us to understand some words in everyday language. So let's get started. Last time we left the N's. The last one we talked about was neighbor. Now we're going to go to the O's. But it's interesting. He has no O's as far as definition goes. He gives us some O's, but he says, for instance, the first one, obedience. But he says, go back and see freedom. So I went back and let me reread what I wrote, what I said to you weeks ago, maybe months ago, about freedom. To obey the law of the land leaves us our constitutional freedom, but not the freedom to follow our own consciences wherever they may lead. To obey the dictates of our own consciences leaves us freedom from the sense of moral guilt, but it does not give us the freedom to gratify our own strongest appetites. For to obey our strongest appetites for drink or sex or power or revenge or whatever only leaves us with the freedom of an animal to take what we want when we want it. But it does not give us the freedom of a human being to be human. The old prayer speaks of God, in whose service is perfect freedom. This paradox is not as opaque as it sounds. It means that to obey God Himself, who above all else wishes us well, leaves us the freedom to be the best and gladdest that we have it in us to become. Obedience. Then we come to omnipresence. Oh my, omnipresence. That brings me back decades to when I was in confirmation class. Remember, some of us learned the attributes of God. Omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. But he doesn't explain omnipresence here. He just says ubiquity. Ubiquity seems harder than omnipresence. So let's take a look at ubiquity. Ubiquity. Every automobile bears on its license plate an expiration date. Like mine is 2022, of course, AD. After Christ. A number which represents the number of years that have elapsed since the birth of Christ. This is a powerful symbol of the ubiquity of God. God was, God is, and will be forever ubiquitous. God is everywhere. Ubiquity. I remember in seminary, I think is when I learned this word. You know, sometimes seminary professors don't like to use common language, like, saying, well, we've got to remember that God is everywhere. But no, they have to say, the ubiquity of God. I had to go home to my dorm and find out the meaning of ubiquity. Ubiquity. God is everywhere. So now sometimes when I go to Dead Horse State Park and walk, and all of a sudden I approach and I walk right face into a mass of gnats. And I say, oh, these gnats are everywhere. But now I simply say, these gnats are ubiquitous. And the last one, omniscience. It's another one of the attributes of God. All-knowing, but he doesn't explain that. He tells us to see predestination. Predestination is a doctrine that the Presbyterians really hooked into, just like the Catholics for years really, really stressed the word purgatory, the doctrine of purgatory. That place where people went when they died, and that if you paid enough money, they possibly could get out of that horrible place and go into heaven. But it's not very common these days in the Catholic religion. It's just so is predestination for the Presbyterians. Predestination is a doctrine made up from the theologian John Calvin. And it's the theory that since God knows everything else, he must also know whether each one of us is going to end up in heaven or in hell. And therefore the die is cast before we even cast it. Oh, I'm glad I wasn't raised a Presbyterian. I would have hated to hear, well, Naomi, God knows whether you're going to go to heaven or hell. Of course, now I firmly believe in the power of love, that God continues with us after we die. God is going to be with me forever. Now, I might be talking too liberal for some of you, but God sacrificed his own son so that we might have eternal life. So I think that alone can blow predestination out of the water. It's sort of like Buechner says, it's like the fact that I know you so well that I know what you're going to do before you do it does not mean that you are not free to do whatever you damn well please, whenever you want. You see, as Lutherans, we were learned that one of God's greatest gifts to us was our free will. We don't have strings attached to our heads, being pulled this way and that way. We have our own free will. So, if you ever meet a Presbyterian who still believes in predestination, some Presbyterians, very conservative ones, still believe in double predestination. Predestination is, I know if you're going to go to heaven, and I know that he's not. Double predestination is, I know whether you're going to go to heaven, whether you're going to go, not only that you're not going to go to heaven, but I know you're going to go to hell. And I know you're not going to go to heaven, but you're going to go to hell. That's double predestination. Whew. Does it make a lot of sense? We don't have Lutherans. God is not that kind of a God. God gives us free will, and yet in spite of what we do, there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. Sorry, that was sort of a mini sermon on the word omniscience or predestination. God might be all-knowing in many ways, but God does not limit our free will. All right, we're done with the O's. Now let's go to the P's. Let's go to parents. Honor your father and mother, says the fifth commandment. That's in Exodus 20, verse 12. Honor them for having taken care of you before you were old enough to take care of yourself. Honor them for the sacrifices they made on your behalf, including the ones you would have kept them from making if you'd had the chance. Honor them for having loved you. But how do you honor them? When, well-intentioned as they may have been, they made some mistakes with you that have shadowed your life ever since. How do you honor them when, far from loving or taking care of you, they literally or otherwise abandon you in some other way? How do you honor them when physically or sexually or emotionally they abused you? The answer seems to be that you are to honor them even so. And please don't run away if somebody listening to me heard that, who were extremely hurt by their parents. Please stay and listen. Honor your parents for the pain that made them what they were and kept them from being what they might otherwise have become. Honor them because there were times when, even at their worst, they were doing the best they knew how to do. Honor them for the roles they were appointed to play. Father, mother. Because even when they played them horribly or didn't play them at all, the roles themselves will always be holy. Honor them. Because however unthinkingly or irresponsibly they were, they gave you your life. I think we'll stop there for now. And we have some more P's to continue, some really good ones. So, ponder upon the O's and the P's. Some of the O's and some of the P's, and I'll see you next time. Be safe. Bye-bye.